Can you talk about the distinction between the trained and the untrained in terms of spiritual progress?
Well, the training is going to happen anyway. Everything implies some kind of training. And so you can train to learn about, you can study spiritual, let's say, experience. You can study it. Doesn't mean you're going to have it, but you can study it, you can read about it. So you can be educated about it and know about the religions and the spirituality of all the world. Doesn't mean you're going to have any realization about it. Okay. So I think what you're asking, without asking, is do you have realization with training or without training? I'd say, well, in some cases you have realization without training, and in some cases you have realization with training. Now what do you say?
Does the realization change based on the nature of how one gets to it?
Well, how you get there doesn't affect really what it is, what there means. Who knows what there means or here means? All right. So training then is an interesting word because we can also use the word culturing. See, lead up. See, the path, culturing. The path. You're talking about the path. Does everyone need the path to get to the result? Well, at some point, perhaps. But then when spontaneous creation occurs at early life, which happens in rare cases perhaps, in all the fields, not just one field. I'm no music, so I can speak about that, but we're talking about something that's a universal process. For some, that means the training was before. See, so if I use a personal, let's say, point, so yeah, my ancestors said this, and say, no, you've done this before, so it's easy for you to do it again, which is a way of saying I'm not doing anything. So it's a way of demeaning, taking the wind out of the bags, deflating the balloon effect. Say, well, look what I did. It's like, well, that's nothing compared to what you did before. Oh, is that all you can do now? You did more before. And so, yeah, when we're talking about continuity then, in traditions, and that's why I think in certain traditions, especially the Eastern traditions, there is this talking about being reincarnated in a certain way. But the more you look at that from a microscope, they're saying they're not the same being. They're not the same being, but there's a resonance there that enables them to pick up. Okay. And so that resonance is not necessarily as unique as some people would like to make it. See, it's like unique. Yeah. No, we have the potential in all of us, depending on circumstances and conditions, to fill in and do things ordinarily and extraordinarily, depending on our purpose. And if you have the purpose, if you have a mission. Of course, if you're found by, let's say, the lamas at an early level of life, they start to influence you right away. Not that you don't know them, you may know them. See, you may already know them. But anybody could already know them in a manner of speaking. See, because from a certain level we're all related. So it's not about anybody who's a stranger to you. That's a certain assumption relative to the perception of someone outside of another world, so to speak, outside of one's sphere, one's culture or something like that. But we are strangely connected. When we're talking about the spirit level of it, then everything is very different from the spirit level. You can make all kinds of adaptations in the spirit level of things, rather than in the cultural. People are sort of caught up in the cultural. It's got to be this race or that race, and this person and that person from this line or that line, and realization has nothing to do with that, really. Although it can be cultivated in a unique way in a certain form, and there's no question about that. If we're talking about musical genius or something, that can come out of nowhere. So if it can come out of nowhere, then we're talking spiritual genius is also going to come out of nowhere under the right conditions. And then it's not about anybody doing it and making it a big muscle man job. Well, I did this for 30 years and now look at my muscles and I graduated from it. That's one story. And then you can have it as a child and then nobody can touch it. because it's its own thing. See? So genius is not the human. It's not the person. So it's not your culture. See? So in the spiritualist traditions, or some would call it the shaman traditions, there are those who would say, well, they're inferior traditions because these are primitive peeps. Well, listen, they know what they know, and they know more than you. They know more than your books. You can learn things from them because they're more open to the unconscious, and you got to deal with that. You got to accept that. You're coming from the ego consciousness, and you're trying to get to the unconscious genius, and you don't get to the unconscious genius. And so then it's time, like Jung went to the witch doctors, went to those who were more open to the unconscious and got a lot more from them. Yeah, primitive, no doubt in some ways, but right on point in terms of other things. So very precise knowledge, depending on what we're talking about. So yes, training is helpful because it strengthens whatever the genius is. It can strengthen it. See, it can increase it, enhance it in some cases, or it can, in other cases, kill it. Like in my case. See, the more I start playing the way I normally play it, and try to play something else, whatever was working in me stopped working. It wouldn't work that way. So I didn't want to hear about classical music because it had its own imprint from something else. It had a different mission, a different purpose. Not that classical music is inferior or bad or anything. No, it has its own purpose. So it depends on what your purpose is. See? And jazz is a form of classical music, because jazz is like classical music gone crazy. Say, as Rebbe would say, on steroids. Say, classical training gone nuts. See? Gone wild, let's say. And not that any of that is truth, it's not gospel, but there's something to it. See? And we're talking about levels, so classical musicians got to go to other levels. Because you're born a classical musician, no one is saying that you have to be that all the time. Because you're a jazz musician, no one's saying you have to be that all the time. Because you're a musical genius doesn't mean you have to be that all the time either. See? So training and culturing are steps along the path, and we have to own up to that. They're steps. Because when you get to the subject of, well, let's say the paradox of realization, then nobody knows what to say about that. Because what do they say when they enter the realization? Well, you realize you've always been there, you never gone anywhere. That's not inspiring. All of that for nothing, because you just stop. You can just stop now and dig what it is. You don't have to go age after age, lifetime after lifetime going around in circles, but when all that's required is that you stop. See? But then that's not all that's required. See? It's not just stopping. See? So it remains a paradox. It's stopping and it's going. It's knowing and it's not knowing. See? It's being and it's not being altogether. See? And this is true of any real genius that reaches a confoundment. See? A level of profound intelligence, awareness, and say, well, they know they are the universe. That's all there is to say about it. They're part of that universe. They know that they're part of the genius, and nobody can alter that because they know what comes through them. You have to know what comes through you. What comes through you is going to be obvious to the people around you. And then they have to say what that is. And if it's training, then we know it's mechanical. If it's intuitive and spontaneous, then we know it's mysterious and it's scary. Because you never know what to expect with that. Because then it's not the person.
So the naturally gifted, while they might be drawing on past life experience, you would say it's an impersonal connection to that?
Well, there is an impersonal connection to it, but everybody egotizes it. The mothers and the fathers egotize it. Oh, my child, he got that genius from his grandfather or his mother, right? As if it came from them. They don't get it from anywhere either. Doesn't come from anybody. I mean, the lines, there's resonance with bodies, of course. There's musical families, so there's resonance there. It's not like you're getting it from anybody, particularly. See, we are then accumulating experience and maybe knowledge, accumulating it. And then the genius will use it in its way. The genius I'm talking about is going to be remarkably different from where it came from. That's its nature. It's to see where it came from to not be that. But you have people saying, no, to be genius you have to be exactly like where you got it from. What kind of genius is that? You can make that with a copy machine, with a printer. You just make another copy of it. See, so we're talking about genius being original, in a manner of speaking. I'm not saying this is the law about Jesus. Genius, anybody, as far as that goes. But we're talking about something which is maybe spiritually correct, but we need to look deeper to find out if that's true. See? And one point I need to make here is that if we're talking about genius having universal consciousness, then the infinite is known for what it is. So the fact that it deviates from something is its norm. It's not its fault. It's a norm. See? It's a norm. We're talking about going back to God, the infinite, infinitely creative, right? All knowing nothing in particular, thus everything exactly. Then we're talking about having infinite potential to be unique, beyond uniqueness. So duplicating something is monotony and nothing creative, but primarily mechanical. So we're talking about there's mechanical genius that is like worth so much, and then there's creative genius that is worth more.
So then you would say it comes through those it came from, and rather than comes from those it...
Well, it comes from and through. It comes through to come from those individuals. And so you have self-conscious, but not egoic conscious, in geniuses, and they know they're chosen to bring in something unique and different, and they go about doing it and they pay the price for it, because nobody else wants them to do that. Okay? Because they're creating something different. And it becomes so much the case, they create more resistance. And so then there's a problem, you see, in a sense. See, how to survive the resistance from others, if there is such a thing, in one's case. See? Or you take the easy path and you play what everybody wants to hear, what everybody likes, and you become a wind-up doll for everybody. And do you want to call that genius? I said, well, you can make that, you know, anywhere, everywhere, you can have people come up and do that. That's common. It's popular. That's the norm on the street. That's the norm of education. It's to reproduce clones of these reading and, let's say, mechanical players, virtuosos. Right? They're all unique in their own way, slightly, but they're all playing the same stuff. See? So the contribution, as far as I'm concerned, is questionable. It's useful. Plausible, maybe awardable, yeah, because when you have nothing, then that's something big. If you have genius, you say, no, that's not enough, because I heard that before. I need to hear something different, because we're talking about a universe and unconsciousness that is infinite. So we need to hear something different, otherwise there's nothing worth hearing at that level. It's all the same then. One classical piece after the next classical piece after the next classical piece, all sounding very much the same. And there's no freedom in it, there's no liberation in it, it's all the same thing, and everybody's like falling dead because it's played the same way all the time. Right? Monotony. See? Brilliant monotony. See? Nothing wrong with it. That's what culture is about. See? The extending of something to the infinite, to exhaustion and to like meaninglessness. But virtuosity is still virtuosity, and I highly commend those who are virtuosic in that particular way. But then what? My question is, and then what? Okay, you've done that, now what's next for you? Now you've glorified so-and-so and such a composer, now what about you? Who are you? What are you doing now? Are you just a puppet to the composer? Is that as much as you're satisfied? Is that the kind of genius you're going to be a slave? See? So all of these are good questions. Whether it's in the spiritual realms of philosophic realization or in the musical realms of creative music or not creative music. Same thing.
And is there a pool of, let's say, etheric genius energy that people tap into?
Oh, they can, but we're talking about under what conditions. Now, if you talk about yogic training, you're talking about really old school yogic training, mountain training, right? It's extreme, where you have to strip yourself down, deal with all your fears. You have to go experience the most excruciating discomfort, and that's what's expected. You have to go beyond yourself completely, in a sense. You have to die to yourself. That's good practice. I'm not saying everybody has to go through it the same way to get a good result, but there's some wisdom in that. There's some sensibility there, because we're talking about dying and rebirth. Yeah. Moving through your barriers, so to speak, your culturing, transcending culturing to a certain degree, reaching from the particular birth energy, gravitational earth energy, and moving more into the cosmic, universal mind. to your possibilities and infinite potential. So there's a little bit of a gap there, you know, from finiteness to infiniteness. There's a gap there.
And so would you say that genius arises or doesn't arise in response to the culture and its needs?
Well, we can say who knows, and then who cares? If it's paid genius, I'd put a question mark on it. See, you got a lot of guys that are laborers. They're laborers, right? They're intellectually gifted and so on, but they labor for recognition and money. See? It's not about enlightenment at all. It's not about liberation. It's not about creativity for creativity's sake. No, they're employees. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good to make money and train for rewards and be awarded medals and be awarded statues and whatever. But those are your limits. See, that's a manifestation of what you have created as your limit. See, your limit, not your realization or your potential, but your limit. Say, yeah, I'm as good as a statue. Look, I am as good as this piece of whatever it is here. That's me. And like, that's a joke. To the creative, it's a joke. Say, well, what is that? Well, that's it. You have to be crazy. There's infinitely more. Not just for yourself, so you can go around feeling good as a peacock, that you've gained something because you did the right moves, right, for the right people in the right organization. Say, no, what about the world? Right? What about mankind? What is your offering to humanity? Where's the light you're supposed to bring to humanity? Is it just playing like everybody else, maybe a little bit better, a little faster? What, a little faster is going to be better? See? It's a good big question mark. Who's fooling who here? So what we need here is a creative, let's say, endeavor, and we can only dream to get people to really solve some of the problems in the earth, to have the brain power to do it. Seems like it is, but nobody's mustering it in a certain way. People who have money and power and influence are not mustering the brain power to create real solutions. Say, no, we got to talk the guns down. We don't need to destroy each other. We have to come up with a better heart solution than that. Than bloodshed, barbaric bloodshed. Right? We have to have a more divine, let's say, solution. An answer. A practice. No, even better, a practice that helps people to come to terms with that. So we need people from the upper influences, the upper regions of economic power and wealth, instead of just contributing more to the materialism and let's say the abandoning of common sense relative to the earth. See, start working with what the Dalai Lama and other people of like-heartedness are talking about. You know, help one another to do better. See, to care for one another. I mean, this is a far-out idea in this age right now. It's very far out, and we see it spoken about and let's say embraced throughout the ages by certain peeps. Say, yeah, we can do better. Do we need warfare? Do we need as much greed? Can we come to a certain intellectual solution to make it so that people have what they need, right? Everybody has what they need. We all agree as power players, we all agree, yeah, we can distribute more. We can distribute more. We can give everybody a little bit of happiness. But they need education so that they are able to control themselves when we're talking about emotions and psychic excesses, see, and perversions of, let's say, thoughts, feelings, and actions that are part of the destruction. And we need to have freedom to be destructive to a certain degree because it's educational up to a point. But then we need to have, let's say, the freedom to live a life on a planet that could be very, very beautiful to live on. I'm not sure that the Earth has become that yet.
So is compassion an essential part of genius?
It's a form of genius, compassion, right? Bigger-mindedness, right? Genius, heart genius. We're talking about heart genius then. Yeah, you gotta have some heart genius, not just head genius or just groin genius, right? Not just muscle. See, you need heart genius. I mean, you want your people, it's just common sense, you want your people taken care of, you want your family cared for. Are you the only person that wants your family cared for? Nobody else wants their family cared for, but you, right? Yourself is the only one. See, we have to see where the bigger sense of reality is, so that we see we're part of a big picture, big mind and a big heart here. It's worldwide, see. And we're responsible for it. I think in the origins of, let's say, religious literature, you see, this is what you have to take care of. Who's taking care of it? Who's stepping up to the plate and meeting the commandments to take care of what? Besides your selfishness, right? And let's say feeding that. You have to feed some kind of selflessness, so that the greater part of our intelligence is used for the greater part of humanity. And I'm sure everybody's doing it in their own way. Can it be done better, to a better result? Probably, no doubt.
And how would you characterize the so-called geniuses who invent atomic weapons and, chemical
Scientific
agents?
geniuses, yeah, they're scientific geniuses. They do what they're paid to do. They do what they're paid to do. They're employees. They're sponsored, they're employed by peeps. And sometimes they're evil. You're talking about evil. Geniuses that just want to take over the earth and destroy everybody. I mean, this is like child's play. Okay? That's not a bigger picture, this is a small picture. Have everybody dominated, see, by something. It's a domination game. We're not talking about real genius there, we're talking about questionable genius, evil genius, lopsided genius, lopsided, one-sided genius. See, one side over the other side. See, divided genius. See, it's not the whole genius. It's just divided. Me against you is divided genius. See, that's children playing in this sand lot. See who can get more sand in their eyes first. See, oh, well, the other one is sand. See, who goes blind first? Right, then you get up and you beat on it. See, we know that. That's animal genius. That's brute genius. See? But we need something more, let's say, open than that. Something more spacious than that. Yeah. We need the genius of peace. We need the peace genius in here, not just the do and compete. The competitive genius, we need some heart genius in there. So I think heart genius is what's missing. That's what this segment should be called. See, the need for heart genius.